Welcome to the Retirement Wealth Podcast. I'm so glad you're joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Planning for retirement can feel a bit overwhelming, especially when you're in your 40s.
Absolutely. It's a crucial time, right? You're balancing career, family, and all those other responsibilities, but it's also the perfect moment to really start thinking about your future.
Exactly. And today we're diving into some essential strategies for retirement planning in your 40s.
We'll cover things like how to assess your current financial situation, the importance of maximizing your retirement accounts, and some tips on investing wisely.
And don't forget about managing debt and how to set realistic retirement goals.
Right. It's all about creating a solid foundation for your future. So whether you're just starting out or you've already got a plan in place, there's something here for everyone.
Yes, and we want to make this as practical and relatable as possible so you can take actionable steps towards your retirement dreams.
So let's jump right in. What would you say is the first step someone in their 40s should take when it comes to retirement planning?
So, Emily, when we talk about retirement planning in your 40s, it really feels like, a lot of folks think they have time, right? But the truth is, this decade can be so crucial.
Absolutely, David. We're talking about a pivotal time where decisions now can really shape the next couple of decades for someone. Like, let's say you're 45. That gives you, 20 years until you hit 65?
Exactly. And with the way the economy is shifting, it's more important than ever to start thinking about how to protect your future. Look at inflation right now. It's been a hot topic.
It really has. I was just reading about how many people are feeling the pinch at the grocery store. It's not just about the prices going up. It's about how that affects your retirement savings as well.
Right. For instance, I had a client, we'll call him Mike, who's in his early 40s. He thought he could just wait until his 50s to really start saving. But then he realized, with inflation rates creeping up, his purchasing power could really dwindle if he didn't act soon.
That's a great example. So what did Mike end up doing?
Well, he started looking at his budget more closely. He realized he could cut back on some discretionary spending, like dining out or subscriptions. Then he redirected that money into his retirement accounts.
Smart move! And it's not just inflation we're worried about. Market volatility is also a big factor right now, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. The stock market can be unpredictable. And when you're in your 40s, you want to make sure your investments are positioned to weather those ups and downs.
And that's where diversification comes in, right?
Exactly. It's about balancing risk. Like, I had another client, Sarah, who was really heavy in tech stocks. When the market took a dive, she felt the impact pretty hard. So we worked on creating a more balanced portfolio.
Yeah, I can see how that would be stressful. And it's not just the market, but also tax efficiency. With changes in tax laws, people need to stay ahead of the curve, don't they?
Very much so. Tax strategies can make a huge difference in how much you keep versus how much you give away to Uncle Sam. A lot of folks don't realize that the decisions they make in their 40s can impact their tax situation in retirement.
Right. And then there's Social Security. With ongoing changes in policies, it's essential to understand how that'll affect your retirement income.
Exactly, Emily. A lot of people think Social Security will be a guaranteed income, but it's changing. For instance, if you claim early, your benefits can be reduced significantly.
That's crucial information. And, medical costs are something that can sneak up on people too.
Absolutely. Healthcare expenses can be a massive part of retirement planning. I had a couple, the Johnsons, who didn't factor in health costs adequately. They were shocked to learn how much they'd need to budget for healthcare in retirement.
That's eye-opening. And it really emphasizes the importance of having a solid plan, right?
Yes, it does. And let's not forget the emotional side of financial security. People want to retire feeling confident, not stressed out about money.
Right. It's about peace of mind. I recently spoke to a woman, Lisa, who's 48. She told me that the fear of running out of money in retirement keeps her up at night. She's got some savings, but the uncertainty makes her anxious.
That's a real concern. Having a comprehensive plan can help alleviate some of that anxiety. When you know you've got a strategy in place, it's a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. And it's not just about saving. It's about how you save and plan for what's coming.
Spot on, Emily. And with all these current economic trends, it's like a perfect storm. We've got inflation, market volatility, changes in tax codes, and healthcare costs all colliding at once.
It really is a lot to navigate. And that's why starting in your 40s is so important. The earlier you can look at these factors, the better prepared you'll be.
Yes, and it's about legacy planning too. People want to leave something behind for their loved ones. If you're not planning now, those wishes might not come to fruition.
That's a powerful motivator. So it sounds like we've covered why it's vital to start planning in your 40s.
Exactly. And now we can dive into some core strategies that can really make a difference.
Can't wait to hear those.
So, Emily, now that we've laid the groundwork, let's dive into some of those core strategies for retirement planning, especially for folks in their 40s. It's really a pivotal time, right?
Absolutely. If you're in your 40s, you've got a couple of decades left to really build that nest egg. So where should we start?
Well, one of the first things that comes to mind is maximizing contributions to tax-advantaged accounts, like your 401k and IRAs. These accounts can really boost your savings because they either grow tax-deferred or tax-free.
Right, and I think a lot of people might not realize how much they can contribute to these accounts. What's the current limit on a 401k?
For 2023, it's up to $22,500, and if you're over 50, there's a catch-up contribution of an additional $7,500. So if you're eligible, that's a nice boost.
Wow, that's significant. And what about IRAs?
Traditional IRAs allow you to contribute up to $6,500, with the same catch-up provision of $1,000 if you're over 50. But then there's the Roth IRA, which is another great option. The contributions are made with after-tax dollars, but you can withdraw them tax-free in retirement.
That's super appealing. So if someone is thinking about their tax situation in retirement, a Roth could really be a game changer, huh?
Exactly. But, of course, there are income limits with Roth IRAs, so it's important to check those. Speaking of tax implications, asset allocation is another key strategy.
Right, that's about how you spread your investments across different asset classes, like stocks, bonds, and cash, right?
Exactly. A common rule of thumb is the 70-30th portfolio, 70% in stocks and 30% in bonds, especially when you're in your 40s. Stocks generally have higher growth potential, but they also come with more risk.
So it's about balancing growth with stability then?
Yes, and as you get closer to retirement, you might want to shift that allocation to something more conservative, like 60-40ths or even 50-50.
That makes sense. And what about diversification? How does that play into this?
Great question. Diversification means spreading your investments within those asset classes. So rather than just holding a few stocks, you might want to invest in a mix of sectors like technology, healthcare, and consumer goods. This way, if one sector takes a hit, your entire portfolio isn't at risk.
It's like not putting all your eggs in one basket, right?
Exactly. And then there are bonds, which can act as a buffer during market volatility.
Right. And speaking of bonds, what types would you recommend for someone in their 40s?
Generally, a mix of corporate and government bonds can be beneficial. Corporate bonds usually offer higher yields, but they come with more risk. So balancing that with some stable government bonds can help.
And what about real estate? Is that something people in their 40s should consider?
Absolutely. Real estate can be a great part of a diversified portfolio. It typically appreciates over time and can provide rental income. Plus, there are tax benefits, like depreciation.
So if someone isn't ready to buy a property outright, could they consider real estate investment trusts or REITs?
Yes, REITs allow you to invest in real estate without the hassle of managing properties directly. You can buy them like stocks, and they often pay dividends, which can be reinvested for further growth.
That all sounds great. What about annuities? I feel like they're often misunderstood.
They can be a useful tool for some, especially if you're looking for guaranteed income in retirement. Fixed annuities provide regular payments, while variable annuities can offer growth potential through investments. Just keep an eye on those fees, though, as they can eat into your returns.
Definitely something to be aware of. And speaking of income, we should talk about Social Security optimization.
Yes. Social Security can be a significant part of retirement income, so understanding when to claim benefits is crucial. If you claim at 62, you get reduced benefits, while delaying until 70 increases your monthly amount.
So it really pays to consider your timing. What are some factors people should think about when deciding?
Well, your health, your financial situation, and how long you expect to live all play a role. If you're in good health and can afford to wait, it might be worth it to delay those benefits.
That's useful advice. And then once you retire, there's the question of how to withdraw funds.
Exactly. The 4% rule is a popular strategy. It suggests withdrawing 4% of your retirement savings each year, adjusted for inflation.
So, if you have $1 million saved, you'd withdraw about $40,000 a year?
Right, but remember, it's not one size fits all. Some folks might need to adjust that percentage, depending on their lifestyle, expenses, and market conditions.
And that's where strategies like the bucket strategy come in, right?
Exactly. The bucket strategy divides your investments into different buckets based on when you'll need the money. For example, one bucket could be for short-term needs, with cash and bonds, while another could be for long-term growth, invested in stocks.
That's a smart way to manage risk and ensure you have cash flow when you need it.
Yes, and don't forget about tax savings techniques like tax loss harvesting that can help offset gains and reduce your tax burden.
Wow, there's so much to consider. It really highlights the importance of having a solid plan in place.
Absolutely. And while we've covered a lot, it's also crucial to be aware of common pitfalls. You know, Emily, when we talk about the common pitfalls in retirement planning, one that really stands out is the sequence of returns risk.
Yeah, I've heard about that. It sounds a bit technical, but it's super important, right?
Exactly. So let's say you're planning to retire and you start withdrawing from your investments during a market downturn. That can really hurt your portfolio's longevity.
Right? Because if you're selling your investments at a loss...
Exactly. You're locking in those losses, and it can set you back significantly. I once had a client, let's call him Tom, who retired right before the 2008 financial crisis.
Oh no, that sounds rough.
Yeah, he had to withdraw from his retirement accounts while the market was down, and it was a tough situation. He ended up having to adjust his lifestyle quite a bit because his portfolio took a hit.
So what can people do to mitigate that risk?
Well, one approach is to have cash reserves or bonds that can sustain you during those downturns. It's about having a strategy that allows for flexibility.
That makes sense. And I imagine another big mistake is ignoring taxes when it comes to withdrawals, right?
Absolutely. Many retirees underestimate the impact of taxes on their withdrawals. For instance, if you're withdrawing from a traditional IRA, those funds are taxed as ordinary income.
Right, and if you're not careful, you could end up in a higher tax bracket.
Exactly. I had another client, let's call her Sarah, who didn't account for taxes when she started taking her withdrawals. She ended up paying a lot more in taxes than she anticipated, which cut into her retirement income.
Wow, that's a tough lesson to learn.
It is. But the good news is, with proper planning, you can create a tax-efficient withdrawal strategy. Consider diversifying your accounts. Having both taxable and tax-deferred accounts can really help.
That's a smart idea. What other common mistakes do you see?
Underestimating healthcare costs is a huge one. Many retirees think Medicare will cover most of their expenses, but that's not always the case.
Yeah, I've heard that healthcare can be one of the biggest expenses in retirement.
Exactly. A study by Fidelity suggests that a couple retiring today might need around $300,000 just for healthcare expenses in retirement.
Wow, that's a significant amount.
It really is. I had a client, let's call him Mike, who thought he'd be fine with just Medicare. But when he had to undergo a major procedure, he realized he hadn't saved nearly enough to cover the out-of-pocket costs.
That's such an eye-opener. So what should people be doing to prepare for those potential healthcare costs?
Planning for healthcare expenses in retirement is crucial. It's a good idea to include health savings accounts or long-term care insurance in your retirement strategy.
And what about longevity? I imagine that's another factor that people sometimes overlook.
Absolutely. Many people underestimate how long they'll live. The average life expectancy keeps rising, and if you retire at 65, you might need to plan for 30 years or more of retirement.
That's a long time to be relying on your savings.
It is. I remember a couple, let's call them Judy and Frank, who retired at 65, thinking they'd only need to plan for 20 years. But now, at 85, they're realizing their savings are dwindling faster than they expected.
That has to be stressful for them.
It is, and it could have been avoided with a more realistic assessment of their longevity. Encouraging people to consider a longer retirement horizon is key.
So what's a good way to approach that?
A good rule of thumb is to plan for at least 30 years of retirement expenses, or even more, depending on family history.
Got it. And I know asset allocation is another big topic. How does that play into retirement planning?
While many retirees end up being too conservative with their investments, fearing market volatility.
But that can lead to issues, right?
Exactly. If your portfolio is too conservative, you might not achieve the growth needed to support a long retirement. I had a client, let's call her Lisa, who moved everything into bonds out of fear.
And how did that work out for her?
Not well. While she thought she was being safe, inflation eroded her purchasing power over time, and she found herself struggling to maintain her lifestyle.
That's a tough balance to strike.
It is. It's about finding an appropriate asset mix that aligns with your risk tolerance and your retirement timeline.
And then there's Social Security.
Yes, claiming Social Security too early is another common mistake. Many people don't realize that delaying those benefits can significantly increase the monthly payout.
It's like a guaranteed return, right?
Exactly. I had a client named Bob who claimed at 62, thinking he'd get more over time. But by the time he reached full retirement age, he lost out on thousands of dollars in potential benefits.
Ouch.
Yeah. It's important to weigh the pros and cons and consider your overall financial situation before making that decision.
So to sum it all up, what are some red flags that someone should look out for in their retirement planning?
Great question. If you find yourself overly conservative in your investments, ignoring tax implications, or not planning for healthcare, those are all red flags.
And the key is to be proactive, right?
Absolutely. The earlier you start addressing these issues, the better prepared you'll be.
So what's the next step for someone who might be worried they're making these mistakes?
Well, I recommend sitting down with a financial advisor who specializes in retirement planning. They can help you assess your situation and make a plan to address these pitfalls.
That sounds like a good approach.
It really is. Taking action now can help ensure a more secure and enjoyable retirement down the line.
Great advice, David.
Thank you, Emily. All right, so let's dive into some immediate steps that folks in their 40s can take right now to get a grip on their retirement planning.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think a lot of people might feel overwhelmed, but breaking it down into manageable steps can really help.
Absolutely. First off, I suggest starting with a retirement calculator. Tools like those from Vanguard, Fidelity, or Charles Schwab are really user-friendly. They can give you a personalized projection based on your current savings, income, and expected retirement age.
Right, and those calculators can help you see if you're on track or if you need to adjust your saving strategy.
Exactly. And while you're at it, it's a good idea to check out Social Security's website, ssa.gov. They have calculators there too, which can give you a clearer picture of your benefits.
That's a solid point. Knowing your expected Social Security benefits can really help when you're planning how much you need to save.
Yes, and speaking of savings, if you haven't already, set up an automatic contribution to your retirement accounts, like your 401k or an IRA. It's a simple step, but it makes a big difference over time.
Definitely. And I bet a lot of people don't realize how small increments can add up. Like, even increasing your contribution by 1% can really add up over the years.
Right. And for those who might be worried about their investment choices, reviewing your portfolio quarterly is a great habit to start. It doesn't have to be a huge time commitment, just a little check-in to see if you need to rebalance.
That's a good tip. And if anyone feels unsure about what to do with their investments, there are plenty of financial planning apps that can help guide you. Some even offer robo-advisors if you want a hands-off approach.
Yeah, apps like Betterment or Wealthfront can be great for that. They're designed to tailor investment strategies to your risk tolerance and goals.
And don't forget about tax planning. Using tax software can help you understand how your retirement savings will be taxed, which is super important for your overall strategy.
Exactly. And it's a good time to start thinking about the tax implications of your withdrawals in retirement. Knowing if you'll be in a higher or lower tax bracket can change how you approach saving.
So true. And what about resources? Are there any books or podcasts you'd recommend for those wanting to dive deeper into retirement planning?
For sure. The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins is a fantastic read. It breaks down investing and saving in such an accessible way. And for podcasts, I really like Choose FI. They focus on financial independence and retirement planning, with lots of actionable advice.
Those are great suggestions. It's always good to hear different perspectives and strategies.
Right! And let's not forget about running retirement projections regularly. It's a good practice to revisit your retirement goals and see if you're still on track or need to make adjustments.
Yeah, so checking in with your goals and maybe even having a sit down with a financial advisor every few years can really keep you aligned.
Absolutely. And remember, it's never too late to improve your plan. Even if you're starting in your 40s, there are still plenty of strategies you can implement.
Exactly. Small steps can lead to big changes over time. It's all about being proactive and making informed decisions.
And as you make these changes, keep that positive mindset. You're taking charge of your future, which is what really counts.
So those are some practical first steps. Now let's bring this all together.
Well, Emily, I think we've covered some really important points about retirement planning in your 40s.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about how crucial it is to start saving early, right?
Yes, and diversifying your investments too. That can really help mitigate risks as you move closer to retirement age.
And we can't forget about the importance of having a solid emergency fund. It's like a safety net, you know?
Exactly, and then we discussed the value of understanding your retirement goals, like what kind of lifestyle do you envision for yourself?
Right. Setting those clear goals can really guide your decisions as you plan.
So for everyone listening, remember, start saving early, diversify those investments, maintain that emergency fund, and keep your retirement vision front and center.
Yeah, and it's never too late to make adjustments, right? Every little bit counts when you're building and protecting your retirement wealth.
It really does. It's all about being proactive, staying informed, and making choices that align with your future goals.
And speaking of future goals, if you enjoyed today's discussion, please take a moment to like and subscribe.
And we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway or any questions you might have.
Or share this episode with someone you know who's planning for retirement or already in it.
That's a great way to support each other in this journey.
And don't forget, next time we'll dive into how to generate income from bonds in retirement. That's going to be super informative.
Definitely something you won't want to miss.
Well, thanks for joining us today. We hope you found some valuable insights to help you on your retirement journey.
Take care, everyone.
Bye for now.